Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring confidence. Using the audiobook The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. It's not just about, that feeling good, but like understanding the mechanics of confidence, how it works and how we can build it up, even when fear and doubt are kind of trying to hold us back.
And you're right to point out it's about mechanics. There's a real process here, not just positive thinking. What I find fascinating is how Harris starts by challenging the very idea of success. He moves away from those external markers we often focus on, achievements, status, and instead dives into the importance of values.
That's interesting because most people probably think confidence comes after I'm successful. But this flips it around. Living by your values is the success. So help me understand this values first approach. It's not just about setting a goal like, I want to write a novel,
Sure.
right?
Exactly. Imagine two people want to write novels. One is driven by a need for validation to prove they're good enough. The other is following a deep value of self-expression, regardless of outcome. Their confidence will be fueled by very different things. Harris even gives listeners an exercise to identify their core values, prompting them to consider things like, adventure, authenticity, or even beauty.
So it's like those values are the compass,
Mm.
pointing towards the kind of life you find fulfilling, not just checking off society's boxes of success. And what I find really intriguing is that Harris points out our values can actually change over time.
Right. It's not this static list. Think back to what was important to you at 6 years old. Maybe it was making friends or playing pretend. Now, those might have evolved, but the underlying desire, connection, creativity could still be driving forces in your life.
That resonates with me. As a kid, I was obsessed with building elaborate Lego cities. Now, I'm not exactly doing that anymore, but the joy of creating, of building something complex and beautiful, that's definitely still a core part of what I love about my work.
And that's the key. Regularly reflecting on your values, it isn't some woo-woo exercise. It gives you a framework for decision-making, a way to navigate tough choices. When you're clear on what truly matters to you, the motivation and clarity often follow.
So we're not just blindly chasing goals, we're aligning our actions with something deeper. Okay, so values are the compass,
Ooh.
but what does it mean to redefine success? It sounds like we're tossing out the usual yardsticks of a fancy job or a big bank account.
In a way, yes. Harris challenges that narrow view. He argues true success lies in living in a way that reflects your values, day in and day out. It becomes less about the destination, more about the journey itself.
So even if I'm not at my dream job yet, but the way I'm treating people, the effort I'm putting in, that aligns with my values. That's a form of success right now.
Absolutely. It's a powerful shift. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't achieve his goal of full equality during his lifetime, but his actions were profoundly successful because they were rooted in his values of justice and love.
That's a fantastic example. You're right, it changes the whole game. You can experience success right now, in this moment, based on how you're choosing to act. But let's be real. There's this other big player in the game, fear. It feels like this monster, always lurking, ready to sabotage any attempt at confidence.
And that's where Harris offers a surprising take. He
Yeah.
doesn't frame fear as the enemy. He actually sees it as a natural human response, often a sign that you're pushing yourself in a meaningful direction.
Hold on, so fear can be a good thing. I feel like we're constantly told to get rid of fear to be fearless. But you're saying it's more nuanced than that.
Think of it like this. If you're not feeling any fear, you're probably stuck in your comfort zone, not really challenging yourself. Fear is often a signal that you're on the verge of something important, something that matters to you.
Okay, I'm starting to see that. But intellectually understanding it doesn't always make those feelings easier to handle. Does Harris give any practical tools for working with fear instead of just trying to white-knuckle our way through it?
He does. He introduces a technique called NAME. Notice, acknowledge, make space, expand awareness.
All right, name it to tame it. I like that. But break it down for me. How do you actually do this? What does it look like in practice?
It starts with noticing the fear, not judging it, not resisting it, but simply acknowledging, okay, this is fear showing up right now. Then you make space for it. Instead of trying to push it away, you allow it to be there, almost like a guest in your house.
That's interesting. It's almost counterintuitive, right? Usually we want to avoid uncomfortable feelings, but you're saying it's more about creating space for them rather than fighting them.
Exactly. Harris uses a great analogy. Imagine dissolving salt in a tiny cup versus a vast lake. The amount of salt, the intensity of your fear might be the same, but the container, your perspective, determines how overwhelming it feels.
So by practicing name, we're essentially building a bigger container for those feelings, a wider lake. So the fear is there, but it doesn't feel so intense and all-consuming. It's like, come on in, fear, have a seat, we've got this.
I love that. And that space allows you to make choices based on your values, not just react from a place of fear.
This is making a lot of sense. So I'm facing a challenge, I've identified my values, and I'm working on naming those fear-based feelings. But what if I'm just stuck? What if I'm waiting for that motivation fairy to show up and sprinkle me with some get-up-and-go dust?
Ah, the infamous motivation trap. This is where Harris dives into another game changer, the power of commitment. He argues that waiting for motivation often leads to, well, more waiting.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's like waiting for that perfect moment to start a project, only to find myself still procrastinating weeks later. So what's the alternative?
Instead of relying on a fleeting feeling, he suggests focusing on commitment. It's about making a conscious decision to take action, regardless of whether you feel motivated in that moment.
So even if I'm not feeling super inspired or excited about a task, I can still choose to commit to it and just get started.
Exactly. And here's the best part. Taking action often creates motivation. It's like building momentum. Once you start, even with small steps, you often find the motivation follows.
That's so interesting. It's like tricking your brain into getting on board with the plan.
It's more about aligning your actions with your intentions. Harris actually shares a really relatable story about his own struggles with writing. Some days the words flow effortlessly, while others it feels like pulling teeth. But what keeps him going, even on those tough days, is commitment. He's made the decision to show up and do the work, regardless of how he feels in that moment.
That resonates with me so much. It's such a powerful reminder that we don't have to be at the mercy of our emotions.
Right.
We can choose to act in alignment with our goals and values, even when those feelings aren't perfectly aligned just yet. So we've got values as our compass, we're redefining success, and we're learning to work with fear. But what about failure? That big, scary F word that can make even the most confident person want to hide. How does Harris suggest we deal with those inevitable moments when things don't go as planned?
He does something really interesting in here. He reframes failure completely. Instead of seeing it as the opposite of success, he encourages us to view it as feedback.
So it's not about avoiding mistakes at all costs, but about learning from them, turning those failures into stepping stones rather than roadblocks.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective. Instead of asking, why am I so bad at this? You ask, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this information to grow?
That's such a powerful shift. It's taking something that often feels scary and turning it into fuel for growth. And, I'm already starting to see a pattern here. There's this emphasis on action, on showing up and doing the work, even when it's uncomfortable or challenging. But I'm guessing there's a lot more to unpack when it comes to putting these ideas into practice.
You're absolutely right. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring when we continue our deep dive in part 2.
Welcome back. So far, we've been exploring Russ Harris's ideas from The Confidence Gap. And honestly, my brain is already buzzing with new perspectives on how to approach success and even failure. But before the break, you mentioned something called the confidence cycle, which sounds like it takes these ideas and turns them into action.
It does. It's Harris's framework for developing mastery in any area of life, and it goes beyond just thinking about things differently.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What are the stages of this confidence cycle?
There are 4 key stages: practice, apply, assess, and modify. It's a continuous loop, a process of honing your skills, putting them into practice in real-life situations, taking a look at what worked and what didn't, and then making adjustments to your approach.
So it's not about expecting to be perfect right away, but about embracing that learning curve, being willing to experiment and make mistakes along the way. But I imagine that takes a certain kind of mindset, a willingness to keep circling back and refining your approach, even when things get tough.
Exactly. It requires what's often called a growth mindset, the understanding that failure isn't the end of the story, but a valuable source of feedback. It actually ties back beautifully to what we were discussing earlier about reframing failure.
You're right. It's not letting those setbacks define us, but seeing them as opportunities to learn and get better. So how does this confidence cycle play out in real life? Can you give me some examples?
Absolutely. Imagine you're trying to improve your public speaking skills. The practice phase might involve taking a course, joining a Toastmasters group, or even just practicing in front of a mirror.
Okay, so that's building the foundational skills. Then what's apply?
That's where you take those skills out into the real world. It might be volunteering to give a presentation at work, or even just striking up a conversation with a stranger at a party.
So you're putting yourself out there, testing the waters, and seeing how those skills hold up in a real-life context.
Yeah.
And then comes assess, right?
Yeah.
That's where you take a look at how things went and figure out what worked and what didn't.
Exactly. It's about honestly evaluating your performance. Maybe you nailed the presentation but felt really nervous beforehand, or maybe you stumbled over your words a few times but noticed that you were engaging with the audience and keeping them interested.
And that leads into the final stage,
Yeah.
modify. So taking that feedback and making adjustments to your approach for next time.
Precisely. Maybe you realize you need to work on managing your pre-presentation jitters, or perhaps you need to focus on slowing down your pace and enunciating more clearly. It's a process of continual refinement.
This confidence cycle makes so much sense. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect right away, and instead it creates a framework for ongoing growth and improvement. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to show up, do my best, learn from the experience, and keep getting better over time.
And that brings us back to the idea of committed action, which we touched on earlier. The confidence cycle isn't a one-time thing. It's about staying engaged in that process, showing up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, and trusting that those consistent efforts will lead to growth and progress.
It's like building a muscle, right? The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But I'm guessing there are going to be times when that muscle feels sore, when you want to give up or take a break.
Right.
What does Harris say about pushing through those moments of resistance?
He encourages us to tap into our values, to reconnect with that deeper sense of purpose that's driving us. He even suggests asking yourself, what would someone who truly values, insert your value here, do in this situation?
So it's about using those values as fuel, as a reminder of why you're doing this in the first place. But, it's easy to talk about these concepts in the abstract. I'm curious, what are some real-life examples of people who have embraced this confidence cycle and achieved incredible things?
Well, Harris shares some really inspiring stories in the book. One that comes to mind is the story of mountain climber Joe Simpson.
Oh, I've heard of him. He's the guy who wrote Touching the Void, right?
Well,
The book about his harrowing experience in the Peruvian Andes.
that's the one. Simpson's story is a powerful testament to the human capacity for resilience and the importance of staying connected to your values in the face of unimaginable adversity.
For those who haven't read the book, could you give us a quick recap of what happened to him?
Sure. While descending a mountain, Simpson suffered a horrific accident, breaking his leg in a fall. He ended up stranded on a glacier, miles from base camp with no food or water, and facing a bleak outlook for survival.
It sounds absolutely terrifying. I can't imagine the fear and despair he must have felt.
His situation was truly dire. But what's remarkable is that Simpson, fueled by a deep will to live and a commitment to his values, managed to make his way back to safety against all odds.
It's an incredible story of survival, but what does it have to do with confidence?
Simpson's experience perfectly illustrates the principles of the confidence cycle, even in the most extreme circumstances. Facing seemingly insurmountable challenges, he broke down his impossible goal of reaching base camp into smaller, manageable steps.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the enormity of the task, he focused on the immediate, on what he could control in that moment.
Exactly. And along the way, he was plagued by pain, doubt, and despair, but he kept coming back to his values: courage, self-preservation, and a commitment to doing his best, even when his best felt impossibly small. And it's interesting because Simpson didn't wait until he felt confident to start taking action. He was terrified, injured, and alone, but he moved forward anyway, driven by those deeply held values. And it was through those actions, those small steps taken in the face of fear, that he ultimately found a wellspring of strength and resilience.
It's such a powerful reminder that confidence isn't always a prerequisite for action. Sometimes it's the action itself, driven by a clear sense of purpose that fuels our confidence. It's like that saying, leap and the net will appear.
It's about trusting ourselves to figure it out along the way and embracing the unknown, even when it feels scary.
So if we could distill some key takeaways from Simpson's experience, what would those be?
Well, first and foremost, it highlights the power of values as a guiding force, especially when we're facing major challenges. Having that clear sense of purpose can fuel our resilience and keep us moving forward when things get tough.
It's like having that internal compass to guide you through the darkness, even when you can't see the path ahead clearly.
Exactly. And it also teaches us about breaking down seemingly impossible goals into smaller, achievable steps. Simpson focused on getting to the next rock, the next snowdrift, one tiny milestone at a time.
It's a great reminder to not get paralyzed by the big picture, but to focus on those bite-sized actions that lead to progress over time. What else?
Another takeaway is the importance of staying present, of focusing on the task at hand, even when it's difficult or painful. Season talks about how he managed his pain by focusing on the physical movements, the rhythm of his actions, the immediate demands of the situation.
It sounds like he was tapping into mindfulness techniques, shifting his focus away from the overwhelming fear and pain and anchoring himself in the present moment.
Yes. And finally, Simpson's story reminds us that setbacks are inevitable. There will be times when we stumble, when we fall, when we want to give up. But it's in those moments that we have the choice to summon our inner strength, to reconnect with our values, and to choose to get back up and keep moving forward.
It's like a powerful lesson in resilience.
Sure.
It's not about never falling down, but about having the courage to get back up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
And that's the beauty of the confidence cycle. It's a framework that allows for those stumbles and setbacks. It acknowledges that growth isn't always linear, and that's okay.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much ground, from the power of values to the importance of committed action, and even explored the depths of human resilience through Joe Simpson's incredible story. But I have a feeling there's still much more to uncover, right?
Absolutely. We haven't even touched on Harris's insights into overcoming self-doubt, the nuances of achieving peak performance, or even how to maintain that momentum over the long haul.
That's right. We'll be diving into all of that and more when we continue our deep dive into the confidence gap in part 3. Don't go anywhere. We're back, and I'm still reeling from that story about Joe Simpson. It's incredible what humans can achieve when driven by their values, even in the face of overwhelming fear and adversity. It makes me think, though, action is only part of the confidence equation. Don't we also need some level of skill to truly feel confident in what we're doing?
That's such a great point. Think about it. You can have all the courage in the world, but if you don't know how to swim, jumping into the deep end is going to be more terrifying than empowering. Harris addresses this directly in The Confidence Gap, emphasizing the importance of persistent self-development.
So it's not just about facing our fears. It's about continuously developing our abilities so we actually feel equipped to handle whatever comes our way. I'm sensing a connection back to the confidence cycle we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Remember those 4 stages. Practice, apply, assess, modify. It's a continuous process of honing our skills, putting them into action, evaluating how things went, and then making adjustments to our approach.
It's like a dance between courage and competence. You need both to truly thrive. But I imagine that even with a framework like the confidence cycle, there will be times when self-doubt creeps in. How does Harris suggest we handle those inner voices that tell us we're not good enough or that we're bound to fail?
He offers some really practical tools for managing that inner critic that so many of us struggle with. First, it's about developing self-awareness, noticing those negative thoughts without judgment, recognizing them as just thoughts, not facts. It's like saying, oh, there's that self-doubt again. Thanks for sharing, brain.
So not getting caught up in the negativity, but creating some distance between ourselves and those thoughts. It sounds like a form of mindfulness, really.
Exactly. And then it's about gently redirecting your attention back to the present moment, to the task at hand. Instead of getting lost in a spiral of what ifs and I can'ts, you focus on what you can control. Your actions, your effort, your commitment to the process.
It's like saying, okay, self-doubt, I hear you, but I'm choosing to focus on what I can do right now.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us struggle with that internal critic because we have this deeply ingrained belief that we need to be perfect, to excel at everything. Is that something Harris stresses?
He does, and he makes a really important point. It's okay to not be the best at everything. In fact, striving for perfection in every area of life is a recipe for burnout and misery. It's more about identifying those areas that truly matter to us, where we want to develop mastery and being okay with being average or even terrible at other things.
That's so liberating. It's like giving ourselves permission to be human, to embrace our imperfections, and to focus our energy on those areas where we truly want to shine. But how do we know which areas to focus on? How do we choose where to invest our time and energy?
Harris suggests we come back to our values. What are those core principles that guide your life? What brings you a sense of purpose and fulfillment? Your values can be a powerful compass for directing your efforts and deciding where to invest your energy.
It's like saying, okay, I value creativity, so I'm going to focus on developing my writing skills. I'm not so passionate about accounting, so I'm okay with being just good enough at managing my finances.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial point that Harris makes: honest self-assessment. It's about being able to look at our performance objectively, to identify our strengths and weaknesses, and to figure out what we need to do to improve.
That can be really tough, though. I think a lot of us get tripped up by our own biases. We might be overly critical of ourselves, or we might avoid areas where we feel insecure. How do we get around those mental roadblocks?
Sometimes it helps to get feedback from others, from people we trust, to be honest and supportive. It's not about becoming dependent on external validation, but about using feedback as a tool for self-reflection and growth.
It's like having a trusted mirror to help us see ourselves more clearly, to identify those blind spots we might not be aware of on our own. But I imagine it takes practice to be able to receive feedback gracefully, especially if it points out areas where we need to improve.
It definitely does. And that's where self-compassion comes in. It's about being kind to ourselves, even when we make mistakes or receive critical feedback. Remember that analogy of dissolving salt in a lake? Self-compassion is like expanding the size of that lake so that those difficult emotions don't feel so overwhelming.
It's treating ourselves with the same understanding and kindness that we would offer to a close friend who is struggling.
Exactly. And as we develop that self-compassion, as we continue to practice and refine our skills, those self-critical thoughts will naturally start to quiet down. We build confidence not through some magical transformation, but through consistent effort and a willingness to learn and grow.
It's like that saying, the only way to do it is to do it. But I think it's easy to get discouraged if we don't see results right away. What does Harris say about maintaining that motivation and commitment over the long haul?
He emphasizes that confidence building is a lifelong journey. There will be ups and downs, moments of triumph, and moments of doubt. It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to wobble, you're going to fall, but with practice and persistence, you'll eventually find your balance and ride with confidence.
And even when you've mastered the skill, there might be days when the wind is strong or the terrain is unfamiliar and you feel a bit shaky. But that doesn't mean you've lost the ability to ride. It just means you need to adjust your approach, reconnect with your skills, and keep practicing.
Exactly. And that's where the confidence cycle becomes such a valuable tool. It's not a one-time fix, but a framework for ongoing growth and self-development. It reminds us that we're always learning, always evolving, and that's okay.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like we've uncovered so much about the nature of confidence, from the importance of values to the power of committed action and the ongoing process of self-development.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered to embrace their own unique journeys. Remember, it's not about eliminating fear or becoming perfect. It's about learning to dance with fear, to embrace our imperfections, and to trust ourselves to navigate the challenges and opportunities that life throws our way.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are countless resources available to support you on your journey, whether it's books and podcasts like this one, therapists, coaches, supportive communities, or even just a good friend who's willing to listen and encourage you.
So as we wrap up, we'd love for you to consider, what's one small, courageous step you can take today, something aligned with your values that will move you a little closer to living a more confident and fulfilling life. We can't wait to hear about your journey. Until next time, happy deep diving.